All right, are we ready?
I am.
Everybody ready? Okay. All right. This is the Wednesday, March 13th, mid-year budget study session. We have, I believe, 4 of us here. One will be online, so we'll get to that immediately. Let me just go through the thing here. All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And Megan, do you want to do a roll? Oh, well, let's do the pledge first, then we'll do the roll call. Andrea Papajohn, would you like to say the pledge since you are our member of the public today?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Megan, roll call vote, please, Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember Brownrigg.
Here remotely.
You
Wait,
turn
bad.
your volume. We can't hear you very well.
Is that better? Or do I need to? I'm not quite sure how to crank up the volume on a laptop.
Do you have your earphone, your earbud?
Oh yeah, I'll get some headsets. That'll help.
Yeah.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Here.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Here.
Vice Mayor Beach.
Here.
Mayor Coulson.
Here. All right. I don't think we have any AB 2449, but we do have Councilman Brownrigg participating remotely. Do we need to do something specific? Okay, no, perfect. All right. Item number 5, public comments for non-agenda items. If there's any member of the public who has a comment, something that is not on the agenda tonight, now is the time that you may bring it up. Madam City Clerk.
We do not have any.
All right, no public comments. All right, staff reports and communications. Item A, which is a resolution amending the 23-24 operating and capital budget to reflect the recommended mid-year adjustments and adoption of a resolution authorizing a small position amendment. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to, I think, Lisa and Helen.
I am just going to turn it right over to Helen, and I will apologize in advance. I can't seem to log into the internet, which is another reason we need a new city hall. So I'm going to do my best to participate in the meeting, but I can't look at my screen.
Okay.
So, but Helen is our star here talking about the general fund, mid-year budget update and the 5-year forecast. And then we'll hear from our public works friends about the CIP.
Okay, we'll go ahead and have Helen go ahead and take the stand here.
Great. Yeah. Good evening, Mayor and Council Member. Before you tonight is our fiscal year 23-24 mid-year budget review. Next slide, please. Here's the agenda for tonight. I will provide a brief overview of a few key items, then go over the general fund projections with both included revenue and expenditure, as well as general fund balance and the city reserves. We will also cover projections for other funds and followed by personnel classification position changes. By the end, we will have time for some questions and comments and get the directions from the City Council. Next slide, please. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide the City Council update with our city budget based on project result at this midway point. This will use as our baseline to develop our fiscal year 24-25 budget development, as well as long-term financial forecasting. First of all, our general fund is on track as stated in our city's fiscal year 22-23 audit financial statement, which is staff present to the council back to December 2023. We experienced a nearly $7.6 million surplus last year, which really helped us to fund some one-time project happening in the current fiscal year. This is very good news for us. But on the other side, we are also having some long-term financial challenges. Besides the city long-term liability that I presented during the city's annual goal setting session, which include the pension, OPEB, and also infrastructure need. We are continue to experience challenging with staff recruitment, retention, which can impact ongoing cost that relate to providing the services to our growing community. Based on review of the current year's revenue expenditures, staff prepared recommendations that I'm going to cover in the future slide, which is require City Council's actions. So that's kind of pretty much the executive summary for this slide. Next slide, please. So before we jump in for current year mid-year adjustment, I want to go over the fiscal year audit result. This slide showing you we start the year with $47.4 million. We have revenue collect revenue 83.6 million, and then we incurred expenditure 68.3. We did have some transfer in and out. Net would be 7.7. Which is give us the result of $55 million. In the revenue side, exceed the projection by 8.1 million. This include secured property tax increase $800,000 and a one-time WLF distribution from state for $700,000. The TOT also see upward trending for $2.5 million and the charge for services about 2.5 million, which is a lot of demand for the city services as a public work department as well as a planning and building department. And also recreation department as well. We have a lot of activity going on. For the expenditure side was below the budget, mainly due to the staff vacancy savings. As a result, we're able to add $7.6 million to our fund balance. We end the year with $55 million. The pie chart showing below is made up, what made up the $55 million. The majority is, the big piece of pie is a 21.3 as assigned fund balance. On the right side of the pie, going to show you what's made up that's $21.3 million. So, and we also have 17.6 million restrictable pension trust, leave us with 15.8 million unassigned fund balance. Next slide, please. The total mid-year budget amendment for the revenue is over 1.4 million or 1.8%. The property tax downward adjustment by 568,000 in total. You're probably surprised why the property tax get dropped. So, you know, our secured property tax continue going strong and stable, solid. And then the main factor impact this category is the VLF reduction. So, which is nearly about $1.5 million. I will cover further in the future slide on what happened for the VLF tax. And the next item will be as part of sales and use tax, Measure I increased $89,000 and also offset by reduction in the regular sales tax, which is 1% local sales tax by $460,000. So for the Measure I piece, mainly the use tax, we collect the 0.25%. For example, if people buy a car from other cities, they are using our jurisdiction, then we will get the use tax. So it's not really parallel, like you collect 1% sales tax, you get a Measure I similar increase or decrease, but they are have a bit variation there. So in terms for the TOT, we are expecting $900,000 more than original budgeted. We start the year, we budgeted around, you know, a little bit more than close to $18 million. After we have some look at the current year to date collections, we collect about more than $9 million as a halfway point. And we also receive a positive outlook from the San Francisco Peninsula. And then we are kind of confident to project an increase, close to $1 million increase there. For the charge for services, we increased by $840,000. Few factors contribute to this. One is for police department, they provided this special service downtown Apple Store in the Sofara. We also have $444,000 for public work plan check fees increase, which is we also see a small decrease for planning for the plan review, which is last year we have extraordinary year is really high this year, you know, kind of back down a little bit. We also have one-time contribution, $250,000 from Top Golf project for they are contribute this money for community benefit. And then we also this year, we have park inspection fee. We included $90,000. With that, next slide, please. So here's the property tax historical information. They have been trending upward until this fiscal year. As I indicated early, the main factor is the state takeaway for property tax in the VLF. VLF will continue to be underfunded. So currently we are still waiting for our fiscal year 22-23 million dollars shortfall, about 1.3 million. For 23-24, we also incurred $2.2 million shortfall. With current state, the budget deficit, they are dealing with their challenges. It's very unlikely we will have this money come in before the fiscal year end. So therefore, we did lead to our 1.5 million reduction in our property tax projections. The city manager group continue to work with the county to work with the state legislature. Hopefully, we able to incorporate in those distribution in the future by budgeting cycle. The county submit their application back in August 2023. We are expecting to get some update, supposedly in March, probably later in March. We will see what happened with the state past their budget, can see if this kind of money include or not include. So staff will be monitoring closely and adjust accordingly. Next slide, please. So this slide showing for sales tax, after strong bounce back from the pandemic in 21-22, now the sales tax dropped to 17.1 million for current year. Stay relatively flat, mainly due to the activity slowdown at auto dealership, and also for gas price drop as well, for become back to normalcy. And the people right now shopping maybe towards more necessary purchase because of pressure from inflation. So that's why our sales tax areas can drop. The good things Measure I continue helping, balance it off. So, but nothing more to it. So yeah, pretty flat. Yeah. Next slide, please. Here's our TOT projections. As you can see in the slide, after significant drop in 2020-21, the TOT tax is recurring. We are able to collect $18.3 million in fiscal year 22-23. So as I mentioned earlier, we originally project about 80 million for this current fiscal year based on year-to-date actual, and then the outlook provided by San Francisco Peninsula, we are projected over increase by $900,000. So yeah, that's it. Next slide, please. So let's move on to the expenditures. We adopt the budget with a total $74.5 million in expenditure. The current budget column reflect the action that were taken by the council since the budget adoption. You can see a nearly $3.5 million increase. As I mentioned earlier, this include a $2.6 million tree services contract. The City Council approved on July 5th, right after the new budget adopted. And also this number also includes $745,000 contract carryover from prior year after we close the book. The total request for middle year budget are close to $1.5 million, which is include $241,000 labor negotiation impact. So this impact is after we approve the contract for a 5% increase for all the unions. Original our budget, we did build in the 4% increase. So therefore the impact not as significant as you say, because we already built from projections. So this will also include $393,000 overtime for police department, which is offset by the revenue they receive from the provided special service for downtown stores. We also have $52,000 increase for health insurance premium. Originally, our projection is around 5-6% increase, but we end up with a 10% increase in insurance premium. The number just based on the actual employee sign, which kind of program this, which coverage they sign, either single family, then we really true up based on our actual projected year end. We also include $22,000 for a staff reclassification. I will cover in a later slide. The main contributor for the operating cost is the OPEB allocation and some of the contract service department dealing with vacancies or unexpected services come up. So we did ask close to $500,000 OPEB true up. Even though we see a savings from the staff vacancy, but then our OPEB, the way we collect the money is based on the payroll run. So if we have vacancy, then we not collect enough OPEB, so they leave with us with a deficit for our OPEB fund. So that's why we use this opportunity to up the fund itself. So, okay. Now let's take a, sorry, next slide, please. Now let's take a look at the fund balance. We start the fiscal year with a 55 million in fund balance, which helping with the one-time cost. We also project to the year end with a fund balance about $48.6 million. I did include a column showing the original, our adopted budget. At that time, we did not thinking we're doing so well. We project how fund ending balance about close to 42, but actually we get surprised, which is great news for us. I will show you what's made up of $48.6 million on the next slide.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I'm totally maybe not understanding this. So we have 83 minus 68, but we have a minus 15,336. It's a negative, it's in parentheticals in the first.
Actually, yeah, that's my mistake. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure.
it should be positive.
Big negative 15 million. I was like, I think we're missing somewhere. So this is a positive 15.
Yeah, positive 50. Yes.
Right. Okay. Then we have a transfer to debt, and then that takes us down to the 54. So the numbers work. It's just the parenthetical is wrong. Okay.
Thank you. Good catch.
No problem.
Next slide, please. So based on the city reserve policy of the economic stability reserve, the calculation is based on 24% of budget revenue. So we are projected to be $19.6 million. We also have a catastrophic reserve for $2 million, contingency reserve $500,000. We project pension trust fund will have $18.4 million, leave us with an assigned fund balance $8 million. So that's what's made up total $48.6 million general fund balance. Beside that, I think many times the council asks, okay, where's our capital reserve? So here I'm just kind of include the capital reserve money. We are having close to $21 million reserve. We should both those fundings earmarked for two projects, the Broadway grade separation and then El Camino Real underground utility project. So total, we have about $69 million in total. That's our reserve and the fund balance. Next slide, please. So I think in the past, the council asked how are we compare with other jurisdictions? Actually, there is no really apple-to-apple comparison because of each agency, the composition of their general fund is differently. Some agency, they might using different fund to tracking their recreation activities, right? Maybe not part of general fund. And then some agency maybe do include their capital reserve in their general fund. So it's kind of really no comparison. But by just looking at this slide by dollar amount, our city not too low and not too high. We are in the middle somewhere.
And I would also, I guess I would just point out that, so Burlingame is a town of 30,000 people. San Mateo is a town of what, 100,000 people about? So say call it 3 times the size.
Mhm.
So on a per capita basis, it seems like we're well capitalized, we're well reserved.
Right. And also in terms, for example, you look at their fund balance versus their expenditure for their budget, then the percentage probably we are better per se. So, but it's, certainly some other agency have better reserve than us, but we are not lower.
Okay, we're not at the bottom.
So I also want to take this opportunity to thank our current council and prior council for their, develop a strong fiscal policy to able to keep us weather the storm, such as COVID-19 or last winter storm. So just wanted to put out there, kudos to you guys.
Mhm.
Yeah. So here's the general fund projections, before I move on to next section, any questions? No? Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, let's move on to other fund amendment. The notable amendment to other fund revenue budget are Measure W funding for $200,000 for biking sharing program. Thanks to our sustainability program manager, she's a gal, she applied for the grant, we got it. So we also made an adjustment of $2.8 million to building enterprise fund due to the higher than anticipating the building permit activity, which is great news. In terms of expenditure side, majority adjustment are related to labor negotiation and OPEB allocation impact. The total come up with $616,000. If you look at it, $500,000 OPEB, of course, is have other fund impact as well. So kind of that's probably majority of it. We did see an increase of $145,000 in landfill fund to cover the cost of a new regulatory compliant requirement. Facility internal service fund request for $100,000 to cover their unanticipated contract services for dry rot repair or termite, etc. So those kind of anticipated. Next slide, please. This slide showing you the transfers of the fund between city funds. The transfer in equal transfer out. There's a request to transfer from general fund of $80,000, which should include $50,000 to parks and tree CIP program fund to fund their increased demand for tree program. And we also have $30,000 for the bike sharing matching fund, as well as the TDM plan. We also include a request transfer from Measure A fund for the California Drive congestion measurement radio detection project. We received $173,000 grant for this project. We also transferring $35,000 from parking fund and then $130,000 from public facility impact fee to cover some of the costs actually incurred in fiscal year 22-23. Such as the city hall and the golf center, the building repair and the improvement and upgrade to the camera at the Highland Garage parking lot. Lastly, we also request the landfill fund, a transfer from solid waste fund to landfill fund. The landfill fund had experienced a negative fund balance last fiscal year when we closed year end, we about $700,000. So staff, in order to eliminated this negative fund balance, staff determining, solid waste fund a good source because they are literally collect the revenue from same source. So technically you can combine this fund, but we are maintaining them separately. Therefore, we request $4 million to eliminate fund balance. Before I move on to my 5-year forecasting, any questions? Okay, great. Next slide, please. Okay, now let's look at the 5-year forecasting. It's shown here to highlight year-to-date revenue growth at a different rate because each revenue source impacted by many different factors. We did incorporate a VLF shortfall in this forecasting. The VLF, the gap, will probably going to grow as the property access value going up, and then non-base A school to flip to the base A. The school, so we will anticipate this gap going to wider. You can see even though we are experienced the positive operating result on the row 3, so we are, for example, 23-24, we'll have 2.4 million, and the next fiscal year 6.8, and ongoing 7.3, 7.4. We have a good positive operating result, but however, the demand is there, especially for our CIP contribution for next couple years, have a 12.5, 10.7 million requirement. I will let public work to have their presentation show you what their plan is. The total requests are growing faster than resource we have for next 4 years, and we are hoping by the year 5 we can see some positive result, and then we can get out of the deficit mode. The projection is based on the current information available. The county assessor office going to give update on VLF, as I mentioned early, and then staff going to working on the 24-25 budget development in the next couple months, and hope more information become available, then we can project more relevant budget present to you. In this forecasting, I do want to get some direction with council regarding the pension trust fund. In the our prior pension study, actually our contribution starting drop down, eventually going to drop, stop, and then eventually go back up. That's the old projections. Our current projections, the consultant provide us, how about if you using funding now, start a drawdown, how it's going to look like. But that study is based on one point in time snapshot based on current the funding the funding in the balance, right, in our account. But what happened in the market changes. So what happened if corporates not able to perform meet their project investment returns? So just be conservative. Staff kind of suggest, how about let's put a seed money, $500,000 flat for next few years. We're not totally limiting, we now draw down, but keep the momentum going. So that's kind of one thing I do want to get a council directions. The dollar amount can be adjusted up or down as we see our funding fit. Yeah.
We might be about to blow up. We're very sorry.
Madam Mayor.
So,
Can I-
question.
Vice Mayor.
yeah.
Thank you for walking us through this. So the way I'm looking at this too, is sometimes the headlines are
Mhm.
Burlingame deficit spending or whatever. I look at this and I see that we are intentionally investing in capital project funds to the tune of $7 million. And so when we are adjusting our fund balance, it's because we're continuing to invest in CIP.
Mhm.
We're addressing our debt service. We're doing other transfers. We're transferring to our pension trust. But even just look at the capital line. The capital line continues, and that's sort of covering, it's sort of addressing. When I look at the change in fund balance, it's because we're continuing to invest in the necessary capital expenditures. Is that a fair characterization?
Yes, that's fair. And also during the COVID years, we did defer a lot of capital improvement project. So now it's catching up. So the public works staff working with other departments, they really carefully review line by line, project by project, really determine which is really necessarily need moving forward, which can be continue postponing. So I think it's really a fair
Okay.
comments. Yeah, thank you.
And at the end of the day, we still have adequate fund balance. It's just the pace of our revenues coming in.
Exactly. We are kind of,
Okay, thank you for that.
yeah, thanks.
Questions, anyone? Councilman Brownrigg?
Sorry, can you guys hear me okay?
Perfect.
Shoot. Okay, sorry.
That's okay. You don't have to, we can hear you.
You can, okay. So I likewise, found this chart to be a little hard because it seems to show that we're intentionally deficit spending, and we are. I think it might help me if we had the general reserves line above, so you can show residents. Sorry, I'm having an echo, so it's Jeff. But you can show the residents that you're not actually needing to go back to the taxes and so forth. Does that make sense? In other words,
Yeah,
the reason
so
we're
what you're
deficit spending
asking
is
is-
because we have reserves.
Below the net surplus deficit.
Somewhere you want to reflect that there's money and we're not
Yeah.
going below zero.
Or even close.
Right.
I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I think it's I think what we're trying to characterize here and what gets difficult are when you traditionally look at a balance sheet and you see big red numbers with giant parentheticals around them. That's bad. And that means that you're deficit spending. I prefer to look at it like if we just look at our revenues and our expenditures, we are keeping a lid on our expenditures very tight. You can see we've actually, our forecast is going to actually be lower by a small amount. And with our revenues going up, and even the next year, just a tiny little amount. And what that does is it leaves us on an operating budget, 6.8 million in the positive. And so the variables that we can choose and have levers with is not so much debt service fund, or even transfers in and out, but it's really the capital project fund. So we could choose to invest only 5 million in the capital project fund, and then we would end up with a balanced long-term budget. But just like you do with your household, you put money in the bank, you save up, and when your roof needs to be repaired or other things, big capital items need to happen, you make that investment, even though it might exceed what you brought in your household that year. So I think what this shows is that we've done a really good job of saving enough money to invest in these important capital projects, not just for this year, but for the foreseeable future. Even if those investments exceed the over or under revenue and expenditures, we're going to be able to still pull down. And I think that's a reasonable way to run anything that requires long-term capital investment.
Can I make a quick
Yeah.
comment? I mean, I like the characterization and I like the fact that we don't want to look as bad as this would appear. But to me, I look at the capital project fund and these are not luxury items. These are items that we really have to do. So to say that we're just going to cut it back to 5 million, I mean, I don't know. We'd have to wait till the next presentation and see how realistic that is. But the transfer of the debt service fund, that's money we have to come. That's not discretionary. That has to come out. So yes, it's positive. Yes, we have some discretion when it comes to capital projects, but we're not exactly swimming in it. And I don't want to create the perception that we are, because those transfers are required. The capital improvement fund and the debt service fund, they're discretionary up to a certain point, but we would need to keep up our facilities.
Yeah.
So just wanted to.
Yeah.
Be the
I think that's a great way to look at it.
water in the fire.
No, I think it's a realistic way to look at it. Peter? Do you want
I would just echo Councilmember Ortiz in that the visibility around these capital improvement projects aren't luxury items.
Mhm.
They're literally elements that the city is expecting us to fund and control. So, you know, your analogy about a roof or, you know, some aspect of your house, not that that's close to my heart right now with what's going on at home, but yeah, that's very, very important. And I wish there was a way to showcase that a little bit more clearly. And maybe it's back to Councilmember Brownrigg's suggestion, which is, you know, maybe there are notes, maybe there's another line item about what that reserve fund looks, or what that fund looks like, and where we are against that.
The 55 million in reserve, yeah. And the 8 million in somewhat discretionary. Mhm.
Right.
Okay.
Our 5-year forecast gets adjusted as we have new information, especially on revenues. And so Helen and I can noodle on the best way to show that we are not, you know, going out and needing to raise a whole lot of money all of a sudden because we have nothing left. So we can put in an ending fund balance or something to show that there is still some money. We're not as flush as we once were. And I think that's part of the reason we're showing this is that, you know, once upon a time, we didn't see any red numbers, and then COVID hit and we see a lot of red numbers. We have been very judicious in the way we've spent our revenues. We did pull back quite a bit on capital spending, which is why you see such a big number
This year.
this next year to transfer the capital project fund, because so much got deferred for a while. So we are doing some really important projects, but we also want to be cognizant of, you know, what money is coming in. Our TOT is not back yet. And so we, you know, you all know me, I'm very judicious in asking for new expenditure on, you know, hiring additional staff and whatnot. And so we're really trying to focus our resources only on the most important things so that we can fund what we have to fund. And just remember that, you know, the bank is not unlimited, and we just be really thoughtful as we put our budgets together and as we think about our iceberg.
And To that end, Lisa, we do have the new contract provisions incorporated.
Been
this.
incorporated and yep.
So I think that's really important. You see some fairly significant rises in expenditures. And those are part of the effort of the council to, work on that contract to make sure we are trying to keep our people up as best we can.
Yeah, for recruiting and retaining staff, you need to be able to pay a fair wage. And we are in a very expensive market.
Yep.
So as we all know, there were some difficult labor negotiations, and appreciate our HR director, Maria, for getting us through those, and finance staff and poor Karen had to constantly do new costings of staff and did a great job with that. So, I think we got to a place where they weren't entirely happy and we weren't entirely happy, which probably is a really good outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's great that that's incorporated in there, and those numbers are pretty consistent. We know those fairly consistently because we have a 3-year contract. So for the next
right.
3 years, we are pretty
Right.
assured on the financial projections around salaries and benefits.
And then, in that expenditure number, you have all sorts of other things. You have contractual services, you have your basic paper clips and all that, and things just go up. And there's a lot in the contractual services numbers because we have a lot of work to do. And so
Yeah.
if you have a capital project, you might need to hire a whole lot of extra staff to deal with, or not extra staff, extra consulting help to deal with the body of work you have while you're trying to get these big projects done. So there's just a lot that goes into those expenditure numbers. We are a people organization. A lot of what we spend money on is our people, but it's not entirely our people. That's not all salaries and benefits.
Mhm. Okay.
Can I make one other
Yes,
quick
Michael,
comment?
please, Councilman Brownrigg.
Thank you, if I'm able to. So one, I want to praise the report because I thought it did a great job of reminding people of what the city manager and our finance director have both said, which is that we weathered a really big storm. I mean, we lost over $40 million in revenue over 2 years because of COVID. And at the same time, we've been able to keep everybody on, and we also had to cut down spending. So the reason that you see these numbers, as you point out, is because we are now making up for that time. So that I thought was really well explained, and I appreciate that. The other thing that struck me was that the OPEB retired health benefits adds 20% burden to our current labor. And that's just, that's the reason why when you make a promise, you have to know how you're going to fund it. And we are still catching up from promises made a long time ago that weren't funded. And I think we're doing a pretty good job.
Mhm. Well, to that end, I think our Director of Finance has a question for us, which is the adjustment transfer to the pension trust. They have put in here $500,000 to continue to invest in that, reminding everyone that 115 trust, we can take that money. If we were to get into a very difficult financial situation, we can take that money and pay our pension contribution that is required by the state of California with CalPERS. And we could divert, we wouldn't have to pay it out of general fund if we needed to do a little balancing, which is one of the really important features of the 115 trust, and us keeping a little bit in that account versus say handing everything over to PERS. We then control a little bit the disbursements on that. So with 500,000, is there a slide in the not in the presentation, but in the report that would show how much money we would be getting to? What are we right now about? How much is in that account right now?
Last, I think $18 million on previous, prior
Okay.
flight,
18 million.
18.4.
So we would continue putting in dollar cost averaging in 500,000. So, over the next 5 years, it would be 2.5 million, getting us to approximate, we'd be close, a little over 20 million
Mhm.
at that point. I'd love to hear what people think about that, if you're okay with that, if you think we should defer that, or,
We can do it, we should do it.
okay.
Yes.
Okay, Councilman Brownrigg, is he still on, or did he pop off? I lost him.
We might have lost
Okay. I think,
flexibility.
Yeah.
That it provides us is huge.
Yep.
Just the value of that alone.
I agree. And I like, so Councilman Brownrigg, what we're talking about is the 500,000.
I apologize. I heard everything. I
No
might
problem.
have lost the internet connection. So I'm completely agreeing. We should continue to fund.
And I think 500,000 is kind of the minimum. And if we start to see more economic growth and some of these large projects come online on the Bayfront, as we were discussing what the financial impact could be to sales tax and to property tax and other economic TOT as more and more rooms are taken up. We had an interesting statistic, I think Councilman Brownrigg and I yesterday at the chamber, that one of the projects, Helios projects, was estimating something to the effect of 2,000 to 4,000 additional hotel rooms a year from generated just off their project out there. So looking at the TOT, they were estimating, that it's in the 7-figure range for that. So these projects will add to our economic bottom line. We just have to see if they actually get built and then leased and all that gets going. But I think this is a good bottom. And if there comes a point in time when we have more capacity, we can always relook at that. Does that seem fair?
I like it because it's not just doing the right thing by the employees, but it's also helping future councils have flexibility. So I completely support it.
Okay.
Agreed.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other direction?
We continue have more slide.
Oh, we have one more slide. Okay. And by the way, I don't know how you all feel, but I think these slides look really nice. They're fresh this year, are they not? They're new.
Yeah.
Yeah, they look really nice.
Template and everything.
Yeah, the colors look great. They're easy to read. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's kind of fresh branding.
Thank you. So here's just another way showing you our revenue versus expenditures and then transfers to CIP project, transfer to capital improvement. You can see in 18, 19, 19, 20, when we're doing well with the TOT tax, we're able to contribute to the reserves. But for the last few years, we're not able to. We just keep operation going. And then 22, 23, we do have surplus. However, we also saw the one-time need such as the tree services. So we decided to just keep in there, no recommendation made it. And then, of course, the next couple of years, we have a strong demand for the CIP project. So based on this trend, you can say by 28, 29, hopefully we're able to, above the water. So,
Mhm.
yep. Next slide, please. This one of the item for the position changes, which is the Community Development Department, the Planning Division. They request reclassify one temporary part-time staff to permanent part-time staff due to their increased demand for administration service. If you have further question, we can ask a Community Development Director or HR Director help on this topic.
Does anyone have any questions about that? It seems to me like we can all see how much work is coming through our Community Development Department and how many projects, huge, big, complicated projects they've been reviewing. So to me, this seems like a good investment in high-level staffing that will result in facilitated improvement of projects and access to businesses and residents that are needing to work with our staff.
I concur, Madam Mayor, and I'd go a step further to say where I appreciate very much that we don't grow ahead of need, that we're very disciplined. At the same time, as we heard over the last couple of years, there's some of the work categories that are really tough, and we may need to add headcount elsewhere too. We have to recognize that we're growing and part of what makes for job quality is both the salary, but also the amount of work. So I certainly support this.
Everyone else okay?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Next slide, please. Okay.
All right. I got this clue right here. It's very clear and excellent presentation for those of us who have to figure out what to do next. So what we have here, and I'll look to colleagues to move on these two items. So we have, first of all, a resolution to amend the fiscal year adopted budget as presented this evening. Maybe we'll start with that one. And if anyone has, we'll take members, we need a comment from the public. There are any members of the public who would like to comment on what we're going to do right now is the adopted budget for estimates, revenues, and expenditures. This is the mid-year amendment. If anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, this is the time. Nothing, any members of the public here? Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and close public comment on that item. Does anyone want to make a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the resolution to amend the fiscal year 23-24 adopted budget for estimated revenues and expenditures.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion by the Vice Mayor and a second by Councilman Ortiz. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Brownrigg,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Aye.
Councilmember Ortiz,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Beach.
Yes.
Mayor Coulson.
Yes. All right, moving on to the second item. Does anyone have any member of the public have a comment on the resolution to authorize a position amendment in the Department of Community Development?
So moved.
I'm taking I'm
I'm sorry.
just really quick. No comments? Okay, no comments. Okay, we can have so moved. Second?
Second.
Okay, we'll give it to Peter. He was here. Sorry, you're a little delayed on the. So we have I'm kind of for the next few weeks here, for the next few meetings, I'm going to have to lean into allowing Councilman Ortiz to be the lead off on some of these,
There.
so he can finish off his career in style. So we have a motion by the council member and Ortiz and a second by council member Stevenson. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Brownrigg,
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Beach.
Yes.
Mayor Coulson.
Yes. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, next slide.
All right, thank you.
I have one more.
You have one more?
Probably this is unnecessary, sorry.
Oh, no,
Okay.
that's good. Let's go with it.
Okay, before I hand over to public work team, I want to let you know next step for the budget process. Staff will work on the budget development for fiscal year 24-25 in March, April, and bring proposed budget for council review on May 22nd. We
Okay,
are hoping to have the budget adoption at either June 3rd or June 17th meeting, depending on how many feedback direction we get.
okay.
During this period of time, staff also planning to bring the master fee schedule for council consideration, if include any potential revenue result from this study. We are also continuing monitoring the budget as more information come in. If any significant adjustment for current fiscal year, we will bring forward for council approval as well.
Thank you.
With that,
Okay,
conclude my presentation.
that sounds terrific. Yeah, those slides don't have that line of demarcation, pre-Ortiz, post-Ortiz. I'm gonna just really not let him. We're gonna have the opportunity to have lots of feedback on your decision over the next 6 weeks there, Ricardo.
Looking forward.
We're all just.
Really looking.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much. That was really great work on the staff's part. And we really appreciate, Helen, you and all of our, I know it's not just you. I know it's all of your people. If you want to acknowledge anyone, please do.
Yes, I do. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thanks, Karen Chow, our financial service manager. She really helped me work on this project as well as for senior accountant. Nan, she's not here today, but both of them work on. And then thanks for my peers. They all helping support this process. Really appreciate it. It's really great teamwork. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Well, wonderful work under your lead. Yeah. Big round of applause for everyone. All right. Yay. Thank you. Moving on to item B, which is the CIP Capital Improvement Program funded by the General Fund, Measure I, Gas Tax, Measure A, Senate Bill SB1, Parking Enterprise Funds, Public Facilities Impact Fees, and Development Fees.
Hmm.
And I'm gonna,
We have Kevin. up top.
we have Kevin. Kevin's up. Syed, I see you are taking the Ricardo Ortiz tactic of
Someone's hiding in the back.
hiding in the back. Well, welcome, Kevin. We're so happy to have you here today to make the presentation. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. I'm Kevin Okada, Senior Civil Engineer, and I'm pleased to present the draft CIP budget for year 24-25. The focus of today is the general fund, and we'll come back here in May for the water, sewer, storm 24-25 CIP budget. I also want to thank all the other departments for all their help. It was a collaborative effort, so thank you to everyone else for all the help. So first, we'll go to the agenda. So first, we're going to talk about the projects that we're requesting funds for. And then we're going to talk about the multiple funding sources that we've used to diversify and relieve pressure from the general fund. And then we're going to give a quick summary. We're going to ask for council direction and feedback. And department heads are available for project-specific questions. Next slide. So here's the CIP by funding source. So we're requesting a little less than $10 million for general fund. And we've also requested a number of grants that we've applied to and awarded. So I want to point that out, the 6.5 million. We've also used a lot of developer impact fees and other impact fees. So the total request this year is 25.5 million. Next slide. And the next slide shows it by category. So in the lead is Parks and Recs with 40% over on the side with the pie chart. And facilities this year has grown significantly. Last year was only 5%, and it's up to 25% this year. And also bike head is 20%, which is a lot of Measure A and other grants. So the grant request is 25.5 million. Next slide, please. So Parks and Rec. Our largest funding request is for the Town Square Public Plaza project. We're requesting $7 million. Previously approved was $4.5 million. And a lot of that was developer contributions and other funding sources. And the total cost we think is going to be around 11.5, but we haven't gone out to bid yet, which we're planning for construction at the end of the year. Next project is the Mills Canyon slide repairs. There was a number of storm damage last year, and we requested a FEMA grant, but we're not granted or not awarded that grant. So this money will be used to build some retaining walls and other improvements in Mills Canyon. After that is Laguna Park.
May I ask a quick question?
Please, Councilman Brownweg.
I guess my question is, as we do work below private property in Mills Canyon, should we be getting releases from the property owners in terms of anything that might happen to the private property in the future? You know what I mean? We're trying to shore up the hill to help everybody. But do we expose ourselves to more liability?
And
So,
turn that over to,
yeah,
we'll turn that over to the city attorney.
sure. No, so, I mean, there's always a chance that somebody will sue us, but the thing is that with the city taking these proactive measures, right, such as and these mitigation measures, such as creating a retaining wall or otherwise shoring up the hillside, and then with the city council accepting that project, that acceptance of the project at the end of the process gives the city design immunity protections that are provided under the government code. And so, you know, we certainly can't stop somebody from suing us, but we are able to rely on those protections that are afforded the city under the government code as a defense against that lawsuit. It's, you know, to answer your question directly, council member, it's really hard to negotiate and get a release from individual property owners.
Mhm.
And those would probably look very different from one property owner to the next. And I don't think it's an effective use of our efforts to sort of insulate ourselves when we're already afforded those defenses from tort claims under the state code.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. So 700K, we're requesting to renovate Laguna Park. And the remaining ones are to replenish funds for various citywide improvements, such as trees, playgrounds, fencing, and athletic turf replacement. So the total request for parks is a little over $10 million. Next slide. And here we have some pictures. So on the left is the Mills Canyon repair and maintenance, showing the slide repair. And on the right is a picture of Laguna Park Playground. And in the middle, we have some turf that needs to be replaced. Next slide.
May I ask a question on
Yes.
Laguna Park? I can remember when it was turfed when my children were little, but now they're big and in college, so I guess it's time. Are there going to be additional renovations on this playground, or really is it just the squishy, or is there going to be a comprehensive,
They're gonna redo the playground.
to really comprehensively redo?
It's a beach theme, right, Margaret? Come on up.
Totally cool. We had a committee, they've, big community survey, and at the next commission meeting, the commission will approve the design, and it is beach theme. They're gonna have both ages. They will still have swings. They're totally maximizing the space. There'll still be a picnic table,
Cool.
and we'll have all new surfacing. It'll be ADA compliant with some new ramps. It's gonna be cool.
It's exciting.
So-
Thank you.
Very good. Just a quick question, Margaret. I'm sorry now that you're gone. But so I had a couple of people reach out to me, and we always get about every other year someone reaching out about the sort of magic playgrounds, the sort of 80 magical bridge ones. Can you tell me like what would be unique or special, or do most of our playgrounds have lots of features in that, or is that ever something we would consider?
All our playgrounds have multiple features. The magical playgrounds are for very large spaces.
Okay.
The only space we probably have in the city that you could get the benefit out of a magical playground would have been Washington Park.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I do like that it's going to be a beach playground. That's very nice.
Next slide. So the building facilities, so yeah, bear with me. I've grouped them into categories. So we're gonna have a little animation here. So the first request is for PD, which we've shown with the blue arrows. And it's a two-phase project. The first phase is the ADA improvements at the lobby and the Sally Port. We're gonna convert to a gym. And then the second part is we'll take the existing gym and expand the women's locker room and have new lockers and new bathrooms for both the men and the women. So that's shown in PD in blue. And also at PD, we're gonna have new emergency radio infrastructure and also new dispatch console. And then next, I put in orange, Public Works Corporation Yard. So the first project is a new roof for the Corporation Yard. So we talked about the new roof, and it's in here. So it's a $500,000 general fund request. Typically with the Corp Yard, we split that between water and sewer. So we'll be back there in May asking for an additional $1 million for a total of 1.5 to replace the roof at the Corporation Yard. And that's to make room in preparation for the solar panel project that you see at the bottom. We've gotten a low interest loan for $3 million. And you want to replace the roof, then put the solar panels on top. And that also goes with the new EV chargers that we're putting at the Public Works Corporation Yard. As we electrify our fleet, we also need EV chargers to charge those new vehicles. And next, I put all the fire improvements in red. So Fire Station 34, we're looking to design a new HVAC system. We've heard that it gets very hot and very cold, and it's in need of new controls and new HVAC. We also want some miscellaneous improvements at Fire Station 34, such as painting, new perimeter fence. The training tower is in need of some work, and other miscellaneous improvements at Fire Station 34. And at the bottom, we are looking at design for Fire Station 35. In 2020, we remodeled the living quarters of 35, and now we want to come and do the other side, which is the kitchen and the living area. And lastly, in green, we have Parks Corporation Yard renovation. We're asking for design funds to look at redesigning the corporation yard. It no longer meets the needs of our employees, and it's almost 50 years old, and we want to look at designing and planning of that. So the total request for facilities this year is much increased. It's 6.4 million, but 3 million of that is low interest loans. Next slide. So we have some pictures here to kind of show what we're doing. So on the left, this is the existing Sallyport. This is next to jail. We're going to make this into an indoor space. We're going to put all the gym equipment in there. And then we have a picture of the women's locker room on the right, which is very cramped and not large enough. And the men's locker room needs new renovation of the bathroom, which is the picture in the center. Next slide.
Can I ask a quick question,
Yes, please.
Madam Mayor? Thank you. On the fire investments, I recall that the scope of work that was done recently suggested that perhaps the station on Rollins Road might have to be beefed up and turned into a real response station in light of all of the work going on the east side of 101 and in Rollins Road. And I wonder two things. One, is there a timetable for when that decision might get made or a budget might be assigned? And two, if the city manager could remind me, I guess, whether that becomes a Burlingame obligation only because it's on our land or it's the whole CCFD.
So there's no timetable yet. You're talking about the,
Station 34.
no, Station 36 on Rollins.
36 on-
Yeah, the admin station. Standards of cover, that's the term I was trying to come up with. They did the big
Thank
standards
you.
of cover study, which they presented to the fire board last year, and then you all received a little mini presentation late last year. So we are going to be undertaking like a strategic planning process in fire to sort of figure out what do we need to do moving forward with the standards of cover. And so talking about whether we need to reactivate Station 36 as a working fire station or not will be part of that discussion. In general, the fire stations are owned and maintained by the home agencies. So we have our 3, the other 2 cities have 2 stations each. But the admin building really benefits everyone. So I think if we were doing some sort of minor something or other to Station 36, that would fall on us. But I would argue with my colleagues and the others, the other jurisdictions, that if we're doing a real major something that's going to benefit the entire department and all 3 cities, then we would need to split that cost. But we haven't started that discussion yet.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I may be getting ahead, but do you happen to have any pictures of the Parks Courtyard
They're
up on the next?
kind of embedded in the presentation, but I don't have one specifically that's lined up. Let's see.
I mean, I think for the benefit of the public, just to pinpoint where this is located, it's different than our Public Works Corporation yard, but it's a facility in much need of improvement, of updating.
There's one here on the draft CIP recommendations at the end.
Okay, well, we'll get to it. I'm really glad to see that we have some planning dollars in there and whatever we can do to accelerate that process and really prioritize that for our workforce. I think that's really important. It's in bad shape.
Next.
Just really quickly, I have one at the end. I'll bring it up at the end. No problem. You can keep going. Bike pedestrian.
Okay. So bike pedestrian traffic improvements. The main ask is for the Old Bayshore Highway design. We're requesting for the developer fees in 650,000. And we've also applied for 2 grants, one $2.5 million raise grant, and there's also a 500K grant that we're waiting for approval for. And those are both federal grants. And then after that is the sidewalk program. We're requesting $1 million of Measure I funds and $100,000 of gas tax for curb and gutter repairs. The remaining ones, the citywide pedestrian improvements, citywide traffic calming improvements, and downtown Burlingame intersection improvements. These are like RFBs, rectangular rapid flashing beacons, and striping improvements citywide. And we are asking to fund those through Measure A. We also have some location-specific projects, such as the Broadway corridor traffic signal interconnect. We want to look at how all those signals work together and see if we can make it more efficient. The Bay Trail improvements at Airport and Beach, we want to design that. There's a gap in the Bay Trail between Coyote Point and the Facebook campus. And also we want to look at Floribunda, Almer, Bellevue intersection and see if we can redesign that or make it more efficient. So the total request for bike ped and traffic is a little less than $6 million, but 3 million of that is from grants.
May I ask, unless anybody else has a question, I just have one about the sidewalk ADA Measure I. It just sort of ties into the former one for Park and Rec, which is we had, allocated sidewalk and improvement and ADA improvements was kind of a residual number, but we also had some, do we have pricing yet, Lisa, on the town square? Do we know? We have 7 million.
We don't,
We still don't have pricing. Do we know?
we have to go out to bid and then we'll
Okay.
find out what it's all going to cost.
Okay, and when's that scheduled to happen?
Kevin?
I maybe get some help.
Margaret?
There's a
Mark?
We have to go through a whole EIR process because of the federal dollars we're
Ah.
receiving, which put the whole project back several months.
Okay,
If we could get out to bid in August, I'd be really happy.
August, all right. And once we get it to bid, we will have a better understanding of what the actual cost is going to be. All right. And then if we need, we'll be able to figure out what the funding is and what the gap is, and then we'll have to make some decisions about how to fill that gap.
So right now we
Right.
have that gap filled
Filled.
is on the parks.
Okay,
page.
we have filled it?
Well, we have until we go out to bid.
Okay,
We find that our bid comes in a lot higher than what we're estimating, then we're going to have to come back and figure out which bake sale is gonna
okay,
close the gap.
okay, all right.
If the federal money is what's holding us up till August, can we fund from the reserves and then backfill with the federal money?
No.
Yeah.
Federal
No.
money, so we have learned our lesson. We applied twice now and we're successful in getting HUD EDI money. So it's through Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's their Economic Development Initiatives money. And it's very flexible in terms of what you can apply for. And it's very inflexible in terms of how you can access the money. And so we originally got funding through HUD EDI for solar panels on the community center. And we weren't able to use the funds for that. And we're going through a whole big complicated process now to try to repurpose that money for generators on the community center. We can't, if we decide to defer the use of the federal dollars and do what we want to do, then we would not be able to access the federal dollars. We would have to say goodbye to that $500,000
Okay,
or 750.
okay.
Yeah, it's really annoying because we have these good projects and the feds are making it really hard. Even though Congress says you shall receive this money, the departments then say, oh, wait a minute, maybe you shouldn't receive that money unless you do all this paperwork and jump through lots of hoops.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. All right, sorry. Yes, please, Vice Mayor.
No, I appreciate you asking those questions, Madam Mayor. And you addressed some of the other questions, and we'll see if we have to phase it or what we have to do, but it's good. At least we're getting some
Yeah. Traction.
movement forward. My question, Kevin, is the Old Bayshore Highway design, 3.65 million for planning. for the highway design. I feel like we've done some preliminary design. Can you just help me understand? That's a big investment for planning, but it seems it's bigger than, tell me the scope of that.
Yeah, Vice Mayor,
Or am I just out to lunch? It just seemed.
no, that it's a major
Okay.
project that involves almost a mile length of 4 lanes between Millbrae Avenue and Old Broadway.
Mhm.
Involves a lot of infrastructure, utility relocation, sidewalks, and landscaping. It's-
Green infrastructure planning and
Yeah.
such. Did we already did like a preliminary?
We did a feasibility study and identified a
Okay.
couple of alternatives, and one of the alternative is the one that the council approved, which
Okay.
we are pursuing. The estimated cost is over $25 million of construction, so this is just a design cost
All right,
and,
that,
and permitting as well.
yeah, okay, that helps me because it's larger than just paint on the lanes. It's
a
that
much bigger
alternative is a much bigger,
Mhm.
and it is a large stretch. It just struck me as larger than most of our planning.
And it needs to be coordinated with all the construction that is planned along the Bay Shore,
Yep.
DIVCO and other developments.
Okay, thank you for that.
And we did just get our federal earmark. I had emailed all of you last week that we thought it might go through, and now the president has signed that into law. So we do have a $500,000 federal earmark, and we've applied for a RAISE grant to help as well with this phase. And we won't know about the RAISE grant for a little while, but we're hoping, since the earmark is through Department of Transportation and not HUD EDI, it will be less cumbersome. Fingers crossed.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned earlier that we were getting our Top Golf payment. Is that public benefit payment? Is that going into any of this? Where does that end up landing?
Let's bring Helen up for that. I think it's just
Sorry.
going into, is it just going to the general fund?
Okay, into general fund, and then we'll be able to use it toward
For community benefit.
community benefit. Okay, great.
Yeah, and also just avoid the presentation for the revenue forecasting, we did not consider in the revenue potential burn from Topgolf or other projects. So,
That's not in?
no.
Oh,
But this 250.
The one
yeah,
payment
we
we
already get it.
received so far is in our revenues, but until something opens and is actually active,
yes.
don't put things into our revenue forecast.
Yeah.
Because you never know quite when it's all going to
Right.
start showing up, and you don't
Right.
rely on money that doesn't materialize.
Right. Okay, so great. So that lease payment will come in, as well as potentially other TOT could go up, sales taxes, things like that might all increase, but that's not in there. Okay, great. So we have the 250 first payment, and they're going to make another 250,000 secondary payment. Is that correct? I think it's 500.
You remember better than I do.
Yeah, I negotiated that, 500 grand. So with
Madam Mayor,
recurrence, thank you very much. Yeah, we got that. So that was good.
May,
All right.
may I ask one other question?
Yes, please.
Thank you. It's actually following up on Vice Mayor Beach's question, and I guess my question is, given the amount of large projects that we have, and somewhere it's called out in the budget, or we talked about it earlier. And I guess I'm wondering if I have to choose between where to put a big pot of money, and 25 million would go to doing this particular project versus some of the other projects, I don't know where I would rank that. And my question is, are we, by accepting these grants, in a sense, boxing us in to spending 25 million in the future on this project?
The simple answer is no.
Okay,
Great to know.
thank you.
Thank you. And when we're all wrapped up, I just have one last question about, and Sean Marshall, I believe, is coming on Monday is it this Monday, or when is?
No,
the-
it's for the April meeting.
Okay, when the April meetings, to talk a little bit about the work we're doing at Peninsula Clean Energy, but we do have a Gov PV program, which is low interest or no interest loans to government agencies to do photovoltaics. So I just want to make sure when she comes that we, get all the update and scoop. If there's anywhere we can take advantage of some of their programs, we should definitely see what we can do to backfill. Okay, on to the next slide. Does anyone have any more questions on bike ped? Okay,
Yeah, we just have a couple, we have a rendering here of the Old Bayshore Highway and a schematic design. And then next slide, same thing. Next slide. And this one shows the gap closure of the Bay Trail at Airport and Beach. See how it, as it goes towards Coyote Point, it's a paved trail and it's a dirt trail on our side. So we want to close that. And then we also have a picture of the intersection of Almer and Bellevue and Floribunda. Next slide. Here's a map that shows the areas of the sidewalk repair program that we're working on.
Ricardo, that's your district.
Yeah, but it missed my house.
Way to get that on your way out
Oh,
for your peeps.
Can talk to 'em.
You promised to house, will you stay on the?
Parking and garages, we're requesting
Oh,
400K.
sorry, Peter, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No problem. Just on the Bayshore project and the design, how much of that is a timing issue with some of the development projects that are in the pipeline that are going to affect that roadway or access? And why would we do that project now until we know, for example, at the, like, in other words, like, if we're going to use that $3 million to do as a design, and then we're going to have to spend more to go back at it because of some of the projects in the pipeline, is there a better use or priority of that?
A great question, Councilmember Stevenson. In fact, the money that we are requesting is not going to be spent for construction. It's going to be for planning, design. There's already a template, design template prepared as part of the feasibility study, and all the developers along the Old Bayshore Highway are following that template for their design. And when their designs are completed and they're going to be implementing construction, and some of them are actually implementing portions of construction along the Bayshore, in accordance with the plan that is approved by council. So by the time we have all the funding in place, it might be a few years away.
Okay,
So we are not going to be having cart before the horses.
okay.
And thanks to our Public Works team for having really the vision to make sure we're doing that planning work so it really has a coherent, beautiful plan out there as developers participate and renovate and do their thing. It's important long-term work. Thank you.
Okay, Kevin.
So parking garages, we're requesting 400K to resurface parking lot C. That's the parking lot behind Burlingame Avenue near Donnelly Avenue. Next slide. And here's a preliminary list of the street resurfacing project. We're requesting 2.65 million. We'll come back with this list in May if you guys have any comments. Most of the streets here were picked with the lowest pavement condition index, and they're usually coordinated with other projects, such as a water main project came in on Occidental and Ralston, so we'll come after and pave those streets. Next slide. And here's a map showing the streets that will be resurfaced. I also want to point out that the dashed line is pavement section repairs or dig outs, we call them, and not the entire street. The other solid lines is fully repaved. Next slide. So here's a summary of each by program. As we talked about before, it's 25.5 million. Next slide. Oh, can we go back one? I think, is that the one that has the park?
On the bottom right,
Right?
is
Yeah.
part of the courtyard, and then I think the next slide also has it too.
Mhm.
And then next slide.
On the right-hand side,
There it is.
Yep.
City of Burlingame Park Department.
There it is. So, yeah, we're requesting $10 million of general fund. And we're also taking advantage of grants and developer impact fees. So total was 25.5 million.
All right. I think at this point in time, I will open it up to first just members of the public to take public comment if we have any. That way then we can hear from the public and then we can move on. Are there any members of the public, Megan, who have okay, let's hear.
I received one email from Manito. He says, I urge council and the city to set aside a small pot of money towards mitigating the upcoming development and construction impacts in the fiscal year 24-25 budget. I had actually just sent an inquiry to you regarding the Topgolf opening later this year, so this is somewhat fortuitous timing. There are some relatively cheap and easy things that the city could be doing to mitigate some of the new upcoming traffic patterns and increases in queuing. I don't know what the city has planned between now and then, but if funding is the obstacle, then it might be prudent for the city to set aside money for those improvements to be put in. Things like improving the traffic lanes or improving the traffic signals going towards the Bayside and Topgolf. The same bodes true for next year's El Camino Real massive reconstruction of the roadway from property line to property line. There may be some improvements that can be put in to help us all navigate the traffic nightmares we will all be encountering. It may even make sense to avoid having major paving or reconstruction on city streets in the immediate El Camino Real area. I see Carmelita, for example, as a street on the list for construction. Hopefully, that's either done before ECR or deferred till afterwards. All that to say, please consider a CIP pot for transportation mitigation in next year's budget. And we have no other emails.
Okay, thank you very much. Does staff want to respond to that? No? Okay, thank you very much. Perfect. Okay, so we have that. No members of the public commenting here. We'll go ahead and I'll open it up to questions or comments from colleagues.
Madam Mayor, if I could.
Yes, please.
I just want to briefly comment on Old Bay Shore Highway. I think because of the importance of our TOT for our budget and the importance of what in the transformation that's happening in that area, I think that's an incredibly important project. And I'm glad to see it on here, and I'm all ready to move forward on it. So I'm sure I'll be voting on it. Oh, wait. No, I do. In all seriousness, I do think it's an important project. It's something that's far overdue, and I think the hotels have asked us to spruce up the area. I think this is a really good thing to do. So, thank you. That's all.
Yeah. You can come anytime and visit
And vote.
and vote. I'll let you vote from the audience. It doesn't count, but you can still vote. Please, Vice Mayor.
No, I think, appreciate the discussion and even the public comment, and as staff, our public works staff thinks about, best when El Camino will realistically start. Hopefully it will start this summer, fall. But if it does make sense to have some kind of mitigation fund to have quick response funds available for that project and just think that through, I certainly would support it, but I would defer to staff's recommendation on that. Thank you. Thanks for the hard work on the CIP.
Councilman Stevenson?
Yeah, I think it's great work and great visibility, and I appreciate all the staff's effort on putting that together. There's lots of deferred maintenance on some of the ADA and bicycle and traffic and safety, and I've had discussions with staff on that. I think just making sure that everything that's in that budget is truly one of the high priority areas, especially in context to other major projects like ECR and things. So that's the only comment I have, but appreciate the report.
Councilman Brownrigg.
Thank you. I echo my colleagues' comments.
Great.
I do think thinking ahead about El Camino and diversions and so forth is important, but I know our staff is already doing that.
Fantastic. I'll just wind up by saying there's an interesting article in San Mateo Daily Journal. I think it was an op-ed from some of the bike pedestrian advocates. And there's sort of this like, what's the benchmark by which you should be investing into pedestrian and bike safety and bike lanes? And it was sort of, 5 to 10%. And I feel really strongly that we have in this budget, put into bike and pedestrian safety. I know a lot of our residents question that allocation. They say, well, I only see one person riding a bike or two. But I really think there are more people biking, and as the weather gets nicer, there will be more and more people biking. And I think we have a responsibility, even if it is just one person biking or walking, to make things safe for that. individual. They're taxpayers, they live here, they work here, they ride and commute here. They have just as much of a right to a safe environment as as an automobile. So I just appreciate how you have diligently stuck with doing the work on the pedestrian and the bike safety. It makes me excited to be a biker more than I am. I'm just not as comfortable as some of my colleagues who are really good bikers. But I'm very excited to try some new things. So thank you for making sure that all voices are represented and all modes of transit are considered. And I think with that, we can just have maybe a motion to, go ahead, Michael.
Actually, I'm sorry. I did have one other question. Your point about bike lanes is well made, Madam Mayor. Thank you. It struck me that we have a very elegant design for Rollins Road as well. And I don't remember where we stand on funding that vision.
Thank you.
Councilmember Brownrigg, I'm glad you asked that question. We actually received $3.1 million in grant funds last year for that from OBAG 3 funds from MTC. So that's part of that project. We are going through the grant requirements process for that requires agreements with various agencies. So we are in that process. But that project has about $3.1 million grant funding, and we have also identified a city funding local match, which was budgeted last year, part of the current fiscal year budget. Once the project is designed, we will know the latest updated budget, and then we will be able to advise the council whether we have adequate funding for that.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. If there are no other questions, I'll take a motion to approve the CIP. Oh, what do we need? I'm sorry, did I do wrong?
Just provide feedback. Do we need-
Oh,
Yep.
provide feedback.
Yep.
Oh, we don't need a motion. Okay.
Motion.
All right. Well, does everybody feel comfortable then moving forward? And
Sure.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, really nice. Thank you very much, Kevin. We really appreciate you doing this. All right. See what else is on the end of the agenda here. All right. I think it's just adjournment. Yay. That's always a good item. So with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for the hour and a half of your time. Really appreciate the members of the public who weighed in and who joined us tonight for this very exciting meeting. And thanks to all the hard work from staff. We'll see you guys on Monday night.
Thank you, everybody.
Madam Mayor.